I just want to talk about schizophrenia and spirituality. Now, for a lot of people, schizophrenia is a deeply spiritual experience, all to do with God and the devil. That has been a case for me. As I said, I first got this illness 20 years ago when I was moving over to London to take up casual work, and I basically woke up to a literal living nightmare that was schizophrenia, all to do with God and the devil, being tormented and distressed by the devil. As I said, it was deeply spiritual. Basically, my mind, the schizophrenic mind, has the ability to access other realms and dimensions, other spiritual realms and dimensions. You're able to pick things up that are going on that the normal mind is not capable of doing. It is extremely stressful, as you can imagine. As I said, 20 years old, I first got this illness when I was moving over to London. But the day of moving to London, I woke up in a literal living nightmare, all to do with God and the devil. I was tormented and distressed, demonic voices abusing me. It was deeply, deeply disturbing. In a sense, you could say it's a bit like a bad trip if you took drugs. But with schizophrenia, it's no bad. It's a horrible experience, tormenting, but it's nothing to do with drugs. It's nothing. It's not. It's just a deeply traumatic experience, a literal living nightmare. As I said, when you have this, especially your first break, your first psychotic or your first schizophrenic break, it is, as I said, it's similar you can imagine it's kind of like taking an extremely mild drug, but there is no high related to whatsoever. What I mean by taking an extremely mild drug is you're able to access other dimensions, be aware of other things going on in spiritual realms and dimensions. But it is a deeply distressing and tormenting experience, a hellish experience in truth. I said I've been through it myself, and it was damn bloody tough. As I said, I know there are now. I know I talk with when I talk even about schizophrenia as regards being tormented by the voices. The voices, in a sense, is akin to the cartoon imagery of the angel and the demon on the shoulder, and you're tormented by demonic voices. But by the same token, you're being guided by good spiritual guides. You're going through quite a distressing experience, and you have to nearly find your way out of I'll just say a labyrinth, in a sense, a spiritual labyrinth. You have to get out of the mess you're in. But it is very possible, not just possible, you will get out of it if you use the loaf and you do the right thing. As I said, one last thing I want to comment on before I do is, I know there's are these arrogant atheist types, who like to think they know it all about spirituality and the afterlife. Basically, when I say know it all, they basically dismiss it completely. I asked them, now what experience have you had? What have you been through that gives you such confidence in your beliefs? Or you'd like to just dismiss it all and just throw it aside because other people write stupid books like Richard Dawkins, the nonsense he comes out. Like, I've read Richard Dawkins' atheist book and Christopher Hitchens. They're the biggest load of bullshit. Absolute crap. And they're just pathetic idiots leading more you gobshites down the wrong path. But I just ask you personally, the atheist types, what exactly are you basing your supposed knowledge and insight on? What have you experienced? What have you gone through? You're just listening to other gobshite atheists who say, oh, there is no God, it's a fairy tale. Well, come on. If you experience this illness, schizophrenia, you can see you can access other dimensions and other realms. And I said, there's so many psychics and people who have ability of contacting things in the spirit world. You've got to remember that the human mind is extremely limited in its capabilities compared to the universal mind. We're just, compared to what's going on in the universe, we've got basically the mental capacity of basically an ant compared to the universal mind that is God. And I'm just saying, I'm just sick and tired of these. You meet them all the time, these scum atheist types who just, all they do is they abuse you, they sneer at you when you talk of God, the devil. But you ask, you're a smart guy, you atheist types, how you know damn well that faith and spirituality is a good moral force for society. But your brain's upstairs, you dismiss all that, and you try to throw it about. It's how you claim you read some atheist gobshite's book And it's complete nonsense that they write. Complete, utter nonsense. Because I've read Richard Dawkins' book, what's it called? The God Delusion. Complete baloney. Complete bullshit. He's full of crap. And Christopher Hitchens, oh, he's a complete, that guy. You know, their books are full of shit. They talk the complete load of nonsense, and they're only leading you atheist types, you disrespectful types down the wrong path, down the very wrong dark path. But this is just getting me because I'm used to dealing with atheists too often, and they just rile up that certain degree of contempt in me for them. They're just to be dismissed. As I said, I do ask them, what have you experienced? What have you experienced that gives you such confidence that there is no God, that there is no devil? What have you experienced? You've read a few books. Well, bully boy, that's great. You're really clued in on what's going on then, haven't you? But it's just that I've met them so often in life, and they're leading so many people down the wrong path. I'll tell you, there is a God, there is a devil, and you're here for a reason, and it's called salvation. Oh, fuck. Look, that's me getting sidetracked on the issue. I'm aware whenever I start, because I do a bit of preaching on the street, and I do hand out religious leaflets and stuff, and I do a bit of work, and I'm used to meeting the most disrespectful atheist types. The blasphemy that comes out, the vile blasphemy. You know, they'll come up to you and they'll deliberately insult and say the most insulting, vile things about God, and the most vile things about religion, and the most vile things. And then they seem to think they're intellectually superior. God, that's a joke, you know. You atheists have it well worked out, don't you? But I just want to dismiss them. I'm actually getting sidetracked from the real point of this video. And it's just to encourage people, when you're going through the traumatic experience that is schizophrenia, when it's deeply spiritual, remember the best cure is faith and the practice of spirituality. That will get you better a lot quicker than medication. Because medication, all it will do is tranquilize you. It won't solve the problem whatsoever, because schizophrenia, the truth is, there is a God. Unfortunately, there is a devil. And we're all here to try and save not just our own souls, but everybody's soul.